Welcome back. We're visiting with Professor Jim Kitchen. When last we left you, you were now blasting off in the rocket ship at about 2,300 miles an hour, heading for space, your dream. Was there ever a moment where it got tough? Now, you're taking a lot of G's. Talk a little bit about that for people who don't really experience that.
Yeah. So I had done 2 0G flights so that I would know what space felt like, the zero gravity part of space. But I had also been to NASTAR right outside of Philadelphia, where you can go and simulate centrifugal force. They spin you around. I had done 6.2 Gs, but I was not prepared emotionally or really physically for the actual Gs. So you can play the Masters on a golf simulator, but that doesn't mean that you can still tee off on the first tee with thousands of people watching. Same sort of thing with this. When we took off and we're going 2,300 miles an hour, the blood had rushed from my face, and I was doing everything I could just to hang on because it was really fast, and I just kept saying to myself, you can't pass out. Come on, you can do this. I think it was when the capsule spun, and I felt like I was underneath the rocket as it tilted slightly. I felt like I was on the backside of the rocket as we took off to space. So I had a little bit of, I think, what are called GZ G-forces, which messed with my vestibular system a little bit. But we got up to space. We unhooked from the capsule. It was called separation.
I heard that.
Yeah,
it was a noticeable
it was a
clunk.
Big jolt. And then we're up there in space, and we were to take a photo of the crew. And I looked out, and I just paused when I was up there and I was a little disoriented because I could see out the window, not next to me, but across from me, the blackness of the universe. And I was just mesmerized by that. And everything had happened so quickly. We had raced up to space, but then everything kind of slowed down. And it was this out-of-body experience that was so amazing, Bill, that I just looked out across, took that photo just kind of on autopilot. My friend George Neal, who's the FAA guy that we talked about, he stamped my passport where my Ukrainian stamp is. So he did a ceremonial stamp. I flew the American and Ukrainian flags together. They're floating in space. And then I turned to the window and took it all in. I had floated upside down just to further mess with my senses. And there it was, the curvature of the Earth. You could see out hundreds, if not thousands of miles, the little wisp of the atmosphere. And then the rest of it was what was so mind-numbing, was the blackness of the universe. And just the paradox, the contrast between the two, the darkness, the void of space, and then this big, beautiful planet that we call home, that we kind of take for granted, was just spectacular.
Change you?
Yeah, I talk like this, so glowingly about it, and somebody said to me a couple weeks back, "Oh, you had the overview effect." And I was like, "What's the overview effect?" I didn't know about it. But it's basically how people feel that have been to space. But here I am, just a normal guy, a teacher from North Carolina. All of those, paying my respects to those professional astronauts, the John Glenns and the Gus Grissams and the Alan Shepards, that actually did this for their vocation, right? They were the professionals. And here is just a normal guy like me gets to go to space. And it was, pinch me. It actually happened. There I am actually in space overlooking that whole scene, and being a serial traveler and somebody that's traveled to every country in the world, that was quite a moment.
I can imagine. Well, now you got to come back. And, what was your time in weightlessness? About 10 minutes? Something?
The whole thing was about 10 minutes. But
and now you got to come back down. You got to get strapped back in your seat. What's that like for you? Now the return trip. You had the excitement of getting there, but now you got to get back. What's that like?
Yeah, the G-forces on the way down were more difficult than on the way up. And then we landed, and it looked like it was a pretty tough landing, but it was fine. It was good. But it was very emotional. When we landed and we were exiting the capsule, I was moved because this had been 50 years in the making. Mm-hmm. And I had to put on the face of like, yay, we did it. But and then I got astronaut wings, and I was like, And what they said was particularly emotional for me. That was my 194th boundary. And I just, I was kind of losing it inside.
Jim, the great explorer, astronaut Marco, right? After a lifetime of exploring, congratulations on crossing your 194th border today.
Thank you. That had been so long in the making, and to see that big, beautiful Earth of ours from the context of space and having traveled the world was just so emotional. The big thing was, I'm a teacher. To be able to teach my students that anything is possible, to push through boundaries, and to keep the dream alive, a dream that I had had for 50 years, were very powerful messages that I now can teach to my students.
Family there for the launch?
Family was absolutely there, as were a bunch of friends. Yeah, and interestingly, I told you that I had promoted space travel when I was in college. Some of my friends who had ridiculed me mercilessly for selling space travel were also there. They used to ask me, Kitch, how many space travel trips did you sell? And, ha, ha, ha. And some of them were there to actually watch me go into space, which was beautiful.
Cool. I do got to ask you about this. I mean, thank you for sharing that. I mean, and I hope you don't get tired about telling your story, because people like me can't get enough of it. But I also noticed when everyone was looking out the window, you were kind of fumbling with your wallet and pulling stuff out and doing things. And I noticed you got a little pack there. Did you get to bring things into space, and how did you decide?
I did. So I brought my passports in my flight suit. Here's my flight suit. These were in this pocket. In my right pocket was my passport that I mentioned. And I had, the thing that occupied the most space was my Michael Jordan and Dean Smith signed basketball. And so this was about 1.5 pounds of the 3 pounds. And then, if you promise not to tell anyone,
We won't say a word.
I had about 7 or 8 pounds of stickers that I'm going to give you guys some. It says, "This sticker flew in space." And if you don't tell anybody, I put them in my socks because they wouldn't. I exceeded my weight limit in my official bag, but I packed them in both socks, and so I had a few extra pounds. But don't tell anyone.
I won't say a word.
Yeah.
I won't.
Yeah.
Any final thought? Any takeaway?
I just would say, for those of you that are watching this, it may not be traveling the world, going to 193 countries, or going to space. That may not be the journey that you take. But for me, this was my journey, and we all have our own journeys. And so just start today, do something, and keep that dream alive, because it may not happen right away, and push through those boundaries.
Well, thank you for sharing yours. I'm going to keep trying. I really am. We're going to thank you, too, for joining us today. And we hope you've enjoyed today's show. I mean, I certainly have. If you have any questions at all and would like to know more, visit our website at RaleighCW.com and myrdctv.com. And I'm Bill LeMay. Thank you for watching Community Matters, and we'll see you next week.